Welcome into the Commanders Report. I am your host, Jack Sperry, and on today's show, we're going to be talking about Emmanuel Forbes' new role with the Washington Commanders. Definitely an interesting kind of position that Dan Quinn, the new head coach, is putting Forbes in this year. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Then also, ESPN put out their rookie projections for all the top rookie quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. So we're going to talk about their projections for Washington Commanders' new quarterback, Jayden Daniels. Then we're going to finish up today's show by talking about a boom or bust Commanders wide receiver that I think is very interesting going into the 2024 campaign. So let me know down there in the comments section if you are ready for 2024. Type raise hail down there in the comments section if you are pumped up for the 2024 campaign. Really do appreciate all of your support. And now let's get into our top story today, which is going to be talking about Emmanuel Forbes, who of course was the 16th overall pick in last year's NFL draft. Cornerback out of Mississippi State, had really a rough rookie season, but he's been trying out at kind of kickoff and punt return man for special teams here during the early portions of Commanders OTAs. And honestly, guys, I think that this is a pretty interesting idea. If you followed Forbes' college career, he had a number of pick sixes. So not only was he able to have that nose for the football and the ball skills to catch it, but also he had the return ability and the vision to be able to find open grass and score those touchdowns. And I think that this is definitely an interesting idea. Now, the Washington Commanders do have Jamison Crowder on the roster right now, and he is somebody that I thought did a pretty darn good job as a return man last year for the Washington Commanders. And, you know, he is getting a little bit older. Maybe you feel like Forbes is going to be a little bit more of a, younger option that can be your kickoff and punt return man for a long time, whereas Crowder is kind of on the decline, whatever the case may be. But I definitely think it's going to be an interesting competition, and I do like the approach from new head coach Dan Quinn, saying, you know what, we have these guys that are talented and have unique skill sets like Emmanuel Forbes. We're going to use them in every single way that we can. We're going to try them out at a bunch of different spots and see what sticks and really try to make the most out of the talent we have in the locker room right now. So let me know down there in the comments section, who would you rather see return kicks and punts for the Washington Commanders in 2024? Give me an EF if you want Emmanuel Forbes, or JC if you want Jamison Crowder. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. So now let's talk about ESPN's rookie stat projections for number 2 overall pick in the new Commanders franchise quarterback, Jayden Daniels. This comes to us from Mike Clay. Now, he projects that Daniels is going to play 15 games this year, and this is the stat projections that they have for the new Commanders quarterback. Over 3,500 yards passing with 19 pass touchdowns, 577 rushing yards with an additional 5 rushing touchdowns to go with the 19 passing touchdowns for a total of 24 touchdowns in 15 games started. So Clay is projecting here that Marcus Mariota is going to start the first 2 games of the regular season. And I just don't think that that's probably going to happen, okay? Because that is the catch when it comes to these projections, right? And it doesn't really come up with the whole, it doesn't really paint an entire picture as to what I think Jayden Daniels is going to be able to do in his rookie season, because I do think he is going to be able to play all 17 games and start week 1 over Marcus Mariota. I think we all understand that Jayden is the future of this football team, and I think we also understand that Marcus Mariota isn't the best quarterback in the world either. So I think, if you're Dan Quinn, if you're Cliff Kingsbury, and you're the Commanders, you want Jayden Daniels to get there as soon as possible and kind of get his feet wet in the National Football League. So if he plays all 17 games, and we account for the projections from Mike Clay on a per-game basis, this is what his stats would look like in a full 17-game schedule. So he gets to almost 4,000 yards passing. He gets to 22 passing touchdowns, 654 yards on the ground with an additional 6 touchdowns on the ground. So to put this in perspective here, let's take a look at C.J. Stroud's numbers from last year. He was the offensive rookie of the year, and let's compare his numbers to what ESPN is projecting for Jayden Daniels in a 17-game schedule. So yes, C.J. Stroud was sitting for the first couple games last year with those 15 games started. And so, obviously that skews these numbers just a little bit. But you look at the numbers here, and it's very comparable between these two guys. Now, Stroud had one of the best, if not the best, rookie season for a quarterback in NFL history, and Jayden Daniels is kind of matching him almost step for step. Now, Stroud has slightly more passing yards. He has one more passing touchdown, but you look at the total yards and total touchdowns, Jayden Daniels would actually be more productive both as a passer plus the run game than C.J. Stroud was last season in 2023. And if Jayden Daniels can put up these kinds of numbers where he's putting up almost 4,000 yards passing, where he has 28 total touchdowns, that's going to put him in the driver's seat to be this year's Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now, I have big expectations for Caleb Williams in his first year with Chicago as well. It's going to be very tough to take that trophy away from him, in my opinion, especially with as much help as Williams has there in the Windy City. But man, Daniels is definitely a talented individual, and I do think he's going to be able to put up some pretty big numbers in his rookie season and really be impressive for this football team. Now, coming up here, we got a Commanders wide receiver that has been deemed boom or bust. I'm going to let you guys know who that is and whether or not I think they're going to boom or if I think they're going to bust in 2024. But before we get into it, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Fanatics, where you can get your officially licensed, number 5 Commanders Jayden Daniels jersey from our friends at Fanatics when you use our link, chatsports.com/Daniels today. I'm going to put the link to that in the comments and description of today's show. If you use that link, Fanatics will know that we sent you. So if you want to support the channel here and you want to get a Jayden Daniels jersey in your closet, go ahead and go to chatsports.com/Daniels today to get this jersey in your closet right now. All right, so now let's talk about Jahan Dotson, okay, because he has been deemed kind of like the boom or bust player for the Washington Commanders by Yardbarker here. And I wanted to talk about Jahan specifically because I think he's a very intriguing player because he had a really kind of nice and optimistic rookie season, led the team in touchdown receptions. But then last year, out of nowhere, he had some drop issues. He wasn't the most productive guy out there. And now he's going into a very, very important year 3 for himself and for his future prospects as a legitimate receiving weapon. This is what Bruce Ewing from Yardbarker had to say about Jahan Dotson. Washington hoped Dotson would do better than 520 yards and 5.5 touchdowns per year when they took him with the 16th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. If Dotson can improve on his 2023 season, he can look forward to losing snaps to Luke McCaffrey, the team's 3rd-round pick in 2024. Now, personally, guys, I believe in Jahan Dotson's ability. I had him graded as a first-round receiver back a couple years back when he got drafted, and I thought, it was fine for the Commanders to take him at the 16th overall pick a few years back. And I do think he's still talented enough to be a very good number 2 wide receiver option to Terry McLaurin, who is, of course, the number 1 alpha type in this wide receiver room right now. Jahan's got a lot of the things that you look for in a really top number 2 wide receiver. He might not be the biggest guy in the world, and he doesn't have the biggest catch radius, but he's got really solid hands, or at least he did before last season. He's a really crisp route runner. He's very savvy in the red zone. I think when you pair him up with Jayden Daniels this year, he's going to really flourish, and I think we're going to see more of what we thought we were going to see last year in year 2 than what we actually saw from him in year 2 with Sam Howell throwing him the football. And as far as Luke McCaffrey goes, when it comes to him taking reps and taking things away from Jahan Dotson, I just don't think that that's going to happen, especially in this first year where McCaffrey is getting his feet wet with the Washington Commanders and the National Football League at large. Plus, even if McCaffrey gets on the field, I don't think it's going to take time away from Dotson, because we know Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator, likes to do all these different things with 4 wide receiver sets, 3 wide receiver sets. So it's not like they only have 2 receivers out there and just Dotson or McCaffrey can be out there. I just don't see Dotson losing any time to Luke McCaffrey, at least this season. So who's going to have the better career? Let me know down there in the comments section. Do you think Jahan Dotson has the better career, type JD, or do you think Luke McCaffrey, the 3rd-round pick for the Commanders this year, kind of comes out of nowhere and really follows in the footsteps of his family members that have really had success in the National Football League, type LM for Luke McCaffrey if you think he's going to be pretty darn good in the National Football League. For me, guys, I'm going to say Jahan Dotson. I think that Dotson is absolutely the real deal. I think last year was definitely a down year, and he was somebody that, kind of got screwed by the whole situation with the offense here in Washington. I think he gets it back on track here in 2024. So now let's shift to the last kind of segment here for today's show, which is that Sports Illustrated kind of put out their rankings of the top 32 NFL offensive lines, and they ranked the Washington Commanders offensive line dead last heading into the 2024 season. And, I wish I could stand up here and say, man, SI did Washington dirty, and I disagree with this take. But I don't. I think that, the Washington Commanders, and you guys know this if you've been watching the channel, I'm not a big fan of this Washington Commanders offensive line. And I said this last year, by the way, guys. I got ripped for saying that this offensive line was going to be terrible last season. And then, of course, that's what ended up happening. And this year, I have a very similar feeling. Because you got Cornelius Lucas, who's never really been a full-time starter in the league. Neither is Nick Allegretti. So the left side of your offensive line is definitely looking shaky at best. Tyler Biadasz, I think, is fine, but he's more of a Band-Aid. He's not a long-term option at center, in my opinion. Then you got Sam Cosmi, who's the rock on this offensive line. He's like the only all-pro caliber player on this offensive line right now, in my opinion. Then you got Andrew Wiley, who gave up 9 sacks last year, and you're paying him all this money, so he has to start at right tackle. But, when you're stacking this offensive lineup against the rest of the National Football League, I can't exactly say I blame Sports Illustrated for saying that this is probably the worst group in the entire league at this point. And as we know, it's very hard to be productive on offense without a good offensive line, or at least a serviceable one. And listen, man, I'm hoping Brandon Coleman, who they took in the 3rd round, really flourishes in year 1. I'm hoping Nick Allegretti takes this opportunity to be a full-time starter for the first time in his career and run with it, and he's awesome. I'm really hoping that Andrew Wiley can turn things around here in Washington. But, man, as an objective kind of, person that just looks at what these guys have done and what we can expect from them, I can't say I'm exactly, enthused with this group at this point in the process. Now, let me know, true or false, down there in the comments section. The Commanders have a bottom 5 offensive line in football. Type true if you're with me and think this offensive line has some pretty major holes, or type false if you think that they're better than I'm saying and you think that I'm kind of underrating this unit at this point in time. That'll be it for today's edition of Commanders News and Rumors by Chat Sports. Make sure you click that subscribe button right now for free and daily Commanders News and Rumors coverage all throughout the 2024 offseason.